In this video, we're going to be comparing the GoPro Hero 10 and the Insta360 One RS. These are probably the two top action cameras out right now. I've been using them side by side to see what the differences are. I pretty much checked everything you need to check when comparing two cameras. I've been looking at video quality, photos, the stabilization, the software, the design of the cameras. So I have really gone deep into seeing what the difference between these two cameras are. If you are struggling to choose, then this is the video to watch. So let's get started right now. We're going to start off by looking at the design of both of these cameras because unlike most action cameras, which are usually pretty similar, there are some big differences here. The Hero 10 features a large rear screen covering most of the body and a small front-facing screen. It has a built-in mount and a large protruding lens. So the Hero 10 is pretty standard when it comes to action camera designs. The Insta360 One RS, on the other hand, is a modular camera. It can be taken apart into three pieces and you're able to replace the lens to allow you to shoot different types of videos. In the standard pack, you get a 4K boost lens and a 360 lens, and they call them mods. So if I ever say the word mod, what I mean is the lens. The 4K boost mod is similar to the GoPro Hero in that it shoots kind of standard flat video and is really designed for action camera footage. The 360 lens shoots 360 video, unsurprisingly. The One RS requires a bracket in order to mount for accessories, and the camera needs to be taken out of this when you want to replace the lens. This is the more unique and complicated design of the two, but it does allow the One RS to essentially be 2 or 3 different cameras in one. But taking it apart and putting it together again when you want to change can be a little bit tedious. By far the best aspect of the Hero 10 design is the large rear screen. It's extremely responsive and large enough to be able to select various options quickly and easily. By contrast, the screen of the One RS is under half the size, and this can make selecting icons pretty difficult. Overall, the Hero 10 has the easier, more practical design. However, the One RS is unique and it just allows for much more functionality. Now first, let's take a quick look at the main specs. I don't want to go too much into this because I do believe really the specs don't say that much. It's about how you use it and what it can do. The max resolution of the Hero 10 is 5.3K at 60 frames per second. It can also do 4K 120 frames per second and 2.7K at 240 frames per second. That's pretty impressive frame rates for an action camera. It's one of the first action cameras, I believe, to shoot 60 frames per second over 5K. The One RS is a little bit more complicated, as I'll go into later. It actually has 3 different lenses available, so there's 3 different kind of sets of frame rates and max resolutions. Basically, the top resolution and frame rate for the One RS using the 4K lens, which is the most comparable to the Hero 10, is 4K at 60 frames per second. You can also shoot 2.7K at 100 frames per second and 1080p at 200 frames per second. The sensor size of the One RS is larger. It features a 1/2-inch sensor with a 42 megapixel resolution compared to the GoPro Hero, which has a 23 megapixel resolution. Okay guys, let's get into the proper stuff. Let's start looking at some video shot with both of these cameras side by side. Both of these cameras are obviously primarily designed for shooting video. The One RS can shoot 4K video with its boost lens, as well as 5.7K 360 video with its 360 lens. There is also an optional 1-inch lens available, which can shoot 5.3K video. This optional lens is quite expensive, but is designed to shoot very high quality video because of a 1-inch sensor. I'll be showing you some video from that mod later in this review. So straight off the bat, the Hero 10 does have the more impressive resolution options, frame rate options. However, the sensor in its lens is not as large. So really it's a battle between, is resolution going to result in better quality or is a larger sensor? I personally usually think a larger sensor is better. It allows your camera to take in more light, usually capture better quality details, more realistic color. And I think just showing you these examples, as hopefully you can see they're pretty clearly labeled, I think there is definitely a difference in quality, color, sharpness. The video shot with the Hero 10 does seem to be sharper in most situations, no doubt because of the slightly higher resolution. But having said that, the colors and the dynamic range and the difference between light and dark, I think the One RS does a better job. And again, I'm using this 4K boost lens, which comes with the standard package with the One RS. I think the colors in the One RS shots are particularly more attractive, so I think that larger sensor is definitely doing its job. Having said that, weirdly, when I came to shoot dark night shots or in darker conditions, the Hero 10 seemed to do better, resulting in less noise, more vibrant colors, and less overexposure. For some reason, the One RS tends to automatically boost the ISO when shooting in dark conditions to just very, very high levels to compensate, and while it does result in kind of brighter images, brighter videos, it just makes everything too noisy. Now, having said that, that could be somewhat fixed by going into a manual mode and adjusting it there, but just for the sake of fairness, I used the automatic mode on both of these cameras for all of the shots. Both the One RS and the Hero 10 have a cinematic mode available in the camera, but the way they deal with that is a little bit different. The One RS cinematic mode boosts the resolution to 6K, however, it's restricted to this kind of slightly odd aspect ratio which you would normally see in kind of cinematic movies, like literally in the cinema. Now, I think it looks quite cool. If you wanted to shoot entire videos using this, it would look pretty awesome, but it might not necessarily mix well with other footage not shot in that aspect ratio. The Hero 10 cinematic mode isn't really too different from the standard mode. In fact, you can edit it completely to be whatever you want. It generally just changes the frame rate to 24 frames per second, and everything else is basically the same. Now, let's take a look at this 360 mod, because that's really what sets apart the two cameras. The One RS comes with that 360 element, and it's a pretty big part of the camera. This is a company that primarily creates 360 cameras, and they have a lot of an ecosystem built into getting loads of cool footage using this kind of lens. If you've never used a 360 camera before, this is going to be a new thing for you. If you've already used the previous versions, then you obviously know what it can do. But just for the sake of it, I'm going to go into it. 360 video is very different from normal video. It captures everything around you all at once. You don't need to necessarily be pointing at anything. As long as the camera is shooting, it's going to be capturing everything. Shooting with a 360 camera is like having a whole camera crew, really, in a single device. You can get shots that would usually require multiple cameras or even multiple people, but you can get that with just your camera and a selfie stick. In fact, you can get effects like the invisible selfie stick effect, which is just not possible with other kinds of cameras. On the downside, 360 video is lower quality than normal video compared to standard video. The resolution has to be spread out over a wider field of view, resulting in footage that does look less sharp than we're used to, but it looks fine on a mobile device. It's mostly when you're on a desktop that you're really going to notice the difference. The 360 mod of the One RS hasn't really changed in the past few years. It hasn't changed since the last version. The max resolution still 5.7K, but that is still the top resolution of any consumer 360 camera out right now. So you can still get some really good looking footage from it, especially if you're willing to edit it in the app or the desktop software, and it's quite easy to do that. It has the same drawbacks as other 360 cameras, but it has the same benefits as well. All of the effects and stuff that I've shown you in the past few minutes have been shot with a 360 camera, and it's only possible to get these kind of effects with this camera. 90% of the work when shooting 360 video is in editing, and I'll go into the app a little bit later, but all of this mostly is editing. You can get really creative, and I think it's the best way to shoot these kind of interesting videos. It's great to be able to mix the two together. Now, the Hero 10 has no 360 capability. In order to get 360 video using a GoPro product, you'd need to buy a whole other camera, the GoPro Max. Now, imagine you'd have to buy those two cameras. It would be very expensive, like well over $1,000. So really, the One RS is pretty good value when you think about it, because you are getting those two cameras in one system. Now, I mentioned this 1-inch mod earlier, which is an optional extra. It's actually quite an expensive optional extra, but it's the highest quality, but it's definitely the highest quality option for the One RS. And in fact, in any kind of action camera, this is the best way to get high quality footage in an action camera format. The 1-inch mod max resolution is 5.3K at 30 frames per second and 4K at 60 frames per second. Compared to the GoPro, the resolution is almost identical, but the frame rate options are more varied and on the Hero 10, with slow motion all the way down to 200 frames per second. So let's look at some side-by-side comparisons between the 1-inch mod and the Hero 10. In general, the 1-inch mod outperforms the Hero 10. I think we're once again, better dynamic range and the ability to capture those more realistic colors and details. So while in some situations I do think the 1-inch lens, that larger sensor, is capturing more light, the images appear brighter in darker conditions, for some reason it just does tend to over sharpen the images, which can sometimes I wouldn't say ruin them, but it doesn't particularly make the images look better. In some situations, the Hero 10 does seem to capture better quality overall, so it's kind of depends on the situation. It's going to be a matter of taste somewhat. Sometimes I think the 1-inch lens does a lot better job, but sometimes it tends to over sharpen the video. And this is again thanks to the 1-inch sensor, the much larger sensor now. It's 4 times larger than the one in the Hero 10, allowing you to capture a lot of light and a lot of details, even in darker conditions. In fact, especially in darker conditions, the 1-inch mod is going to outperform the Hero 10 time and time again. So the Insta360 One RS with the 1-inch mod is really a formidable content creation device. It's a action camera, a cinematic camera, a 360 camera, but all of those mods together are pretty expensive, and it's definitely an optional extra. You don't need this 1-inch lens to get the most out of the camera, but if you wanted to get serious and you wanted to kind of up your game in terms of quality, but keep the camera in a small, compact format, then this is a pretty good option. Now let's have a quick look at stabilization, because I've just done a lot of kind of quality comparisons, and obviously these are action cameras. You're going to probably want to be, well, a lot of people are going to be moving around with them. Thankfully, both GoPro and Insta360 have awesome stabilization technology, which pretty much work exactly the same. The One RS features Insta360's flow state stabilization, and the Hero 10 has Hyper Smooth 4.0. Comparing the Hero 10 and the One RS, the boost lens, there really isn't that much of a difference when it comes to keeping video smooth. But the top dog when it comes to stabilization is the One RS with the 360 mod. 360 cameras have the best stabilization basically of any kind of camera, just because of how much information they can capture. The software just allows for perfect horizon leveling, perfect stabilization, but once again, lower quality. To be honest guys, both these cameras have been tried and tested like the previous versions. They're both going to handle pretty much any scenario better than any other kind of camera. There really isn't much between the two. I mean, I haven't done a huge amount of action stuff with it. I mean, I attached it to a bike, attached it to myself going for a run, walked around with a selfie stick and did some fairly intense testing, and yeah, they both handled the situations pretty much basically the same. Hey guys, how's it going? I'm testing the Insta360 One RS and the GoPro Hero 10 to see how they compare, which one is better, and this is kind of like an audio test. It's a pretty quiet area I'm in right now, and I am, I guess, about just over an arm's length away from the camera. So I don't know which one's better, you tell me. The GoPro has, I think, just 2 microphones, whereas the One RS has 3. And so we'll see which one is better. Let's have a quick look at some photos that both of these cameras have shot, because, well, to be honest, I didn't test it that much because I don't think people tend to buy these cameras for taking photos. I think it's definitely an added, just optional extra. Maybe once every now and then you'll see something cool and want to take a photo, but most of the time, if you have a top-end smartphone, your smartphone is going to do a better job. Having said that, the One RS, I think, comes out on top. When it comes to photo options, there are way more photo options. It can shoot raw images. It can shoot automatic HDR without any editing, so it really boosts the quality. And plus, the resolution is way higher at 43 megapixels compared to 24. The GoPro basically just has like a couple of options when it comes to photos. It's not really... yeah, it's just fairly standard, and there's not even that much you can do on the editing app for photos. So, and plus with the One RS, with the 360 mod, you can also shoot 360 photos, which can be used for stuff like virtual tours, and could be viewed on a VR headset if you have something like that. So again, it's more varied, there's more stuff you can do. The final thing we're going to look at is the software, which again, there is quite a big difference here between the two. Starting with the app, the One RS comes with the awesome, in my opinion, Insta360 app, which has so many options and editing features, which I could really make a half-an-hour video just on the app, and actually I have. You can check it out. I'll post a link, guides how you use it. AI editing, there's a full video editor for manual editing, there's color correction, different themes that you can automatically create, there's a tracking system. While it may take a long time to work out how to use everything, the One RS could really not have a better app when it comes to editing video. In particular, the Insta360 app is going to be used for when you edit your 360 videos, because that's basically what most of the features are about in the Insta360 app, because 360 videos do require a lot of editing, but you can get some awesome shots from that. The complexity of the app does mean that you do need a powerful phone to run it, and it can occasionally crash. Crashes more often than is comfortable or is acceptable, but on balance, I think it's still worth it. It's still a good app. The Hero 10 is backed up by the GoPro Quick app, which is a more streamlined experience. It still does a decent job. It still has some AI editing and automatic video creations where you just shovel your footage in and it kind of spits out something that kind of looks like a vlog. And you can add text and music and colors and that kind of stuff, but it's way less complicated than the Insta360 app. Which makes it easier to use, but there are way less options, and I prefer the more deeper editing experience, but that's going to be a personal choice. Both cameras also have desktop software available. The Insta360 desktop software is actually important because you need to use it to render your footage if you want to edit your files on your desktop like Premiere Pro or something. This is an added extra step which can take a long time if you shoot a lot of footage. You have to put the files into the app, render them out. You can add some options, do some editing in that app as well, but it's an added extra step, which is actually a tad annoying, and it just adds more time to your workflow. Once again, the GoPro app is an easier experience, less editing options, not so much to worry about, but you don't need to do this rendering process to get your videos in a usable format. They're ready to go straight away. You can just take them from the camera. So to summarize quickly, guys, these are two very different cameras. I am a little bit biased because this is a channel about 360 video mostly, and obviously the One RS is a 360 camera as well as a standard camera, but I do think that it represents pretty good value for money. You'll get two cameras in one, and one of them has a 1/2-inch sensor, which is quite unusual for action cameras, and I think it can shoot some really awesome footage. Just that compared to the GoPro can somewhat match up to it. I do think the GoPro shooting flat normal video is probably still better. I think the high resolution just makes that difference, and the frame rate options are obviously better. So if we were just comparing the 4K boost lens to the Hero 10, I think the Hero 10 is still the better camera. But we're not just comparing those two, because you also get a 360 lens as well with the One RS. Now that's basically it. If you want to shoot both 360 and the standard video, then get the One RS. If you're not interested in 360 video at all, then the GoPro I still think is the better option. And now there are obviously some other things to consider. The GoPro is way easier to use, I think. The One RS is way more creative and I think has the way better software. So that's it, guys. I hope you found that useful. Let me know what you think if you were trying to decide between these two. If you have any questions, also feel free to let me know. Yeah, I'll get back with some more videos soon on these cameras and some other 360 cameras too. So that's it. Subscribe to my channel, check out my website to see a full list of specs and kind of some screenshots and stuff that I've took with both these cameras. So yeah, that's it, guys. See you next time. Bye.